good to be back, and it's so good to have Matty and James with us today. So welcome to the Digital Fashion Innovator Series here on LinkedIn Live. My name is Marie Bastian. I'm the CEO and founder of World of Mesh, and I'm your host for today's session. So this new era of digital fashion is just bringing together all these amazing talents from all around the globe, and we are here to hear their stories and to celebrate them along the way, and to inspire the fashion industry at large, as well as digital creators. We really try to cover all topics and dive into all the different areas that are specific to digital fashion. So on this platform, all our speakers are speaking on behalf of themselves, not for the companies they work at. And as usual, if you have any questions, just add them to the comments and we'd be glad to incorporate them into our conversation. So with that said, I'd like to welcome Matty and James from Zyro today. So good to have you guys here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us on.
Great. So we're reaching you guys. You're from the UK calling in today, right?
Yeah, we're both based in central Lancashire. So just kind of a bit further north of Manchester.
Nice. Awesome. So it's great to have you. Today we're going to be speaking about the topic reality check, mastering expectations in VR, AR, spatial internet, and gamifications. And we're really glad to have you guys on board because I think there's so many people out there that see 3D images all over the place. And we have also a lot of different levels of qualities and technologies and devices involved. And today we're really going to dig into that and learn together a little bit from you guys. All the details and things we need to keep in mind when we start this journey. So let's just start with an introduction with you guys. Who wants to go first? Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into digital fashion and the space.
Fire away, Matty. Yeah, so I'm Matty. Oh God, yeah. I'm one of the three co-founders of Zyro. I guess our journey as an immersive technology company has kind of started from just exploring these kind of different kind of avenues of technology and how they're kind of growing in the kind of digital space and immersive space at the moment. And Zyro is an agency kind of focusing on enhancing these human connections through the kind of means of kind of creativity and technology. I myself trained as a graphic designer, and same with James. And together with kind of using kind of creative strategy, have started kind of working our way through into kind of fashion space. And we're kind of here today, showing off what we've been up to and kind of our experience of the kind of emerging space.
Great to hear. Yeah, go for it.
Just to bounce off so I'm James Ascroft, one of the other co-founders of Zyro. Matty mentioned that we both studied graphic design. We were with a client today and they seemed sort of boggled at the idea that we both trained as graphic designers and now we're doing all this. Really kind of makes sense that we've ended up somewhere like this. We were quite sort of progressive thinkers with sort of technology and sort of social culture. And it seems evident that things are all going in this direction. So, universities, the point of it is to sort of work towards a future career. And it sort of felt evident that when we were going to graduate, things were going to sort of take off. They've not necessarily taken off as quickly as we anticipated. And that's part of the topic of this conversation. But it certainly feels like we're on the cusp of it and sort of riding that sort of wave that's growing into a bigger one. We're a few years old now, and we've sort of got our traction going. We're bound along. So it'll be good to sort of talk about what the future is and how we've sort of adapted with how things have gone already.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how we say a small wave going into the bigger one. That's a really good description of our tech landscape and what's happening right now. You guys also founded during the pandemic, right? If I remember that correctly. So, cheers to everyone, because that's something no one expected, right? And founding a company also in that time, you just learn so much more levels of business if you go through that, like from the beginning. So cheers to you guys.
It was a gift and a curse, wasn't it? COVID.
Yeah, it
Yeah, a
right.
bit
It
of both.
was, right? Absolutely. And so you guys also had met or had touch points when you were in London at the University of Arts in London, right? If I remember that correctly, because that's something we three actually also have in
Yeah,
common.
yeah. So we all studied. Well, we all studied technically at UAL. Both me and my sister studied on a UAL foundation course, but that was supported by UAL at a separate college near where we sort of now call home. And then I went on to study at UAL, initially LCC, and then moved to Chelsea. But as anybody who went to UAL knows, it's every college really. You just sort of play the game with all of them. So yeah,
It is.
I went off to Nottingham Trent and did graphic design there. And yeah, I think just kind of reflecting on the graphic design point, I think it is a brilliant course for enhancing kind of creative thinking and getting you thinking not just about design, but I guess the brand messaging and the aspect of like how does a brand grow through the industry.
Now, see, that's something that I really had to learn from the beginning because I also come from a design background. And I can totally relate to that. Like, you have to wear so many different hats as founders.
Yeah.
And it's really good to see how your skills all come together. I mean, there's actually 3 of you guys. So that's really a great starting point to have the different skill sets and brand messaging, positioning, and also the creative and technology know-how. So that's a really good starting point. Nice. And I was thinking if maybe before we get started, we do have quite a few technical terms in this title. Maybe we can just set the stage and begin with clarifying a few of these terms. So I was thinking maybe we can go through the differences between the words augmented reality, virtual reality, spatial internet, and gamifications, just for everyone out there to get us grounded.
Yeah. So virtual reality is kind of seen as these kind of virtual spaces which are kind of simulated, and I guess it's a slight disconnect or a major disconnect from the kind of physical world because you're putting on these goggles which are taking you to this kind of different landscape. AR is a nice kind of grounded version of that, and it uses phones or kind of glasses to be able to augment these kind of digital experiences into the physical world rather than kind of disconnecting you, where you're kind of grounded within the physical but using the kind of digital enhancements. I think the spatial internet, I think James can kind of follow on from this, but I think the spatial internet's kind of taking those two, AR and VR, and then kind of turning it on its head and kind of taking it into this new kind of landscape. James, do you want to talk about kind of what we've been talking about over the kind of past 4 days about, I think?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yeah. So so Marie brought up sort of we need to go through these technical terms and explain them. That's sort of the problem of having to do that is part of all about mastering these expectations. The thing that me and Matty have sort of been talking about recently is Apple's recent sort of documentation that they've started to release en masse for their Vision Pro headset. And one of their sort of major guidelines for developers is to essentially throw out all use of the terms VR, AR, mixed reality, all this sort of stuff. Do not use them explicitly. Use instead spatial experiences, spatial design. Little did we know at the time when we came up with this title, which was, a few weeks ago, months ago, I don't know. Did we know that, we'd already sort of hinted at that with the spatial internet. It is a sort of broad term, and it sounds a bit nicer, sounds a bit less techy, sounds a bit more broad consumer. So, Matty's explained the terms there. Really, we can see things going in a direction of it being that simple language of spatial experiences, and that is an umbrella term for all of what Matty's just described, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the next evolution step of the internet, the spatial internet, right? It's moving from a flat interface, when we go into websites or whatever, to actually moving in a 3-dimensional space within the internet. Accessing could be like a shopping environment. It could be, I don't know, I just posted a video from a community event where we had a speaking event like the Digital Fashion Innovator Series shown on a screen in a digital environment. That would actually be a good idea. We could do that sometime. Just thinking of that, but yeah, go on. What?
Yeah, I guess the spatial internet is that umbrella term, and I guess it also kind of brings in that, and we're not going to get into Web3, but it takes that Web3 culture and kind of, I guess, commercializes it a bit better. Again, jumping into the next one, the final one of gamification. I guess gamification is taking the traditional game tools that we're typically use, such as like, I guess reward and competitiveness and all these kind of culturally known kind of topics and places that we kind of identify with from a kid, and kind of adapting them into either the physical world or the digital world.
Yeah, and including
using them through. Go on.
Yeah, go for it.
I guess it's using them throughout any process and kind of making the boring things more fun for people to do.
Yeah, and creating these incentives to start engaging. I mean, a lot of brands use it for telling their heritage, their brand stories, engaging them into the whole story behind companies. Often, like I think that's a really nice evolution that's happening right now, that even though this is such an innovative space that we're moving into, we're referring back to our roots actually at that point. So it's a really interesting blend that's happening. Super nice. Good. So this is really good to clarify the differences. So we have like virtual reality, which is a purely digital world you're put into, completely detached from the real world. Augmented reality is pretty much like overlaying your real world. So you could see your room, and then you could put like, a furniture piece in it, and it just merges with your reality, with the physical world. Spatial internet is more like the evolution of the internet into the experience of seeing instead of 2D in the spatial world. And gamification is having these fun interactions with products, incentives, and so on. So that's a really good starting point. If we move on from there, I would love to hear from you guys what you think is important for anyone, clients or anyone just starting with 3D and getting into VR, AR, what you think is important for them to understand when they start their projects. Because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that happen there as well, because the technologies are just so different to, let's say, standard renderings or CGIs.
I'd say, old things come around. I'd say the old rules still apply, and they still apply big time, and they shouldn't be forgotten. Really focusing on your audience using these pieces of technology is mega important, because you can't just simply go, this new tech looks really cool. Let's just give it to an audience and see if they use it. We've been talking to a prospective client today that they sell wallpaper, really nice premium wallpaper. So their client base, based off statistics, is 95% women. So 95% of women typically got Instagram profiles, all this sort of stuff. They enjoy that engagement through their Instagram profile, the wallpaper page. They previously made an AR application, but they struggle to get conversion of downloading that because it just simply convolutes that. If you can go to where your audience already is and deliver AR content, VR content, spatial content, anything like that, you can make it seamless, then it works brilliantly. So again, it's one example of an old sort of principle in design of, experiences or any such nature, that you should stick to those and really think about this even when using this new tech. I don't know whether Matty can jump in with sort of a technical I was from today's opinion.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Reflecting on that point of like, the technology's not there yet. I think everyone expects that it's come leaps and bounds and it's going to be like it's a real thing in the real world. It's not there yet. A lot of these projects are still 5-10 years out of like kind of actually coming to the full growth and the potential of what they could be. But I think it is just taking those steps, using it as more R&D, PR pieces, obviously there is some practical uses to a lot of these technologies, but I guess it is just making sure that we set those expectations of we can get this far and we can go further, but we need to take that first step into it to kind of get there along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. There are out of the box solutions that you can just plug in and use. But if you get to a certain level where you want to have creative direction and narrative, and having influence on the narrative, and also bringing in your own assets, your 3D assets, in a very safe way, and having really the ownership of it, you're not gonna get around the point of building teams if you're a company, for example, or a brand, to get that skill set up and going internally. And when you get that started, it's not just using the technology, it's building the infrastructure, it's getting the assets ready, the pipelines, tech pipelines in place, understanding which tool plugs into which and which one works well together. Because I think we touched base on that topic as well, right? The challenges of finding the right workflow for your tech pipeline.
Yeah, the lack of interoperability, and I guess the lack of kind of technological kind of access as well. Being the fact that these pieces of tech, they're good for like most people have a phone. It can do so much, but with what we're talking about in the future, it's like we need to go 10 times more just to be able to kind of process and get through the kind of data. Really, it's like kind of data bandwidth issue of like we want to host so much, we want to be able to have a seamless integration to an iPhone, but we're just so far away from that at the moment.
Yeah, and that brings us to the next topic, devices, because one of the main reasons why some people are surprised when they see AR or VR presentations, they sometimes have these high-end renderings in mind. Maybe it's also good to just jump into the differentiation between these two areas, because you can create a rendering, so a computer-generated image from a 3D product. And it's like taking a photography in the virtual world. You have a camera, you have all the lights set up, and the term rendering is basically just creating this photo by having the light bounce off the objects and all the surfaces. And these renderings can go for hours and hours and have a super crisp quality. But if we're talking about AR and VR, we're talking about a whole different story, right? I think that's really important to clarify.
Yeah, I think it's comparable to like the growth of an Xbox or a PlayStation 5, for James's sake.
And the majority of games, just to jump in there, Mike.
I'll jump in there.
We've got hard drives chucked in the back of mine there. It's got 2 hard drives plugged in the back because half the time we're downloading, for example, Call of Duty, it's taking up 250 gig of data on that Xbox. But we can't go and shove 250 gigs worth of data into an iPhone because you're just not going to have enough storage. So it's this idea of how do we real-time stream that data to that phone without costing the user hundreds of pounds just to access that.
Yeah.
I think it's like we're getting there, but we're still a long way off.
Yeah, and that's the next point, right? The real-time rendering constraints that we have. Also, when we're talking about the processing speed, you already mentioned the devices we need in place. Xbox is a lot more powerful than the iPhone, for example, and has a lot more storage. Those are a lot of reasons why, if anyone out there came across a VR image and thought, maybe the quality is not the best, that's the reason why. It's tuning the model to the technology and the presentation form that you're choosing, actually, at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And I guess it kind of goes back to like the mainstream platforms of today of like, Decentraland, Sandbox, Roblox, Fortnite. They all choose to do their graphics and the way they do to help access those technologies and access those worlds. I think they themselves would like it to be leaps and bounds forward. But yeah, I think as technology catches up, so will the graphics of those kind of platforms.
It will. And, you know, I loved it when at some point, you know, a lot of people that are in the gaming industry or that are used to these high fidelity images, they maybe see a Minecraft image or whatever when that game came out, and they thought, well, it's pixelated. But the interesting thing is that the fashion industry got inspired by it. So we had Burberry, for example, taking this aesthetics into their design, into the real world clothing. And I thought that was such an interesting twist on it. And it just shows to you that it's all a question of the perspective that you see something. Creativity isn't everything. And the top goal of having high fidelity, it may not be the goal of everyone at that point. You can set your different focuses. Maybe the performance is your goal. The other people are working on having a space where they can really include and invite a lot of people to join that has the power to host bigger sessions. And it's nice because everyone's working on their own specific area, and I feel like as a community we're coming together. And it's totally fine, you know, that everyone has their focus on their area, because we need to figure out a lot of problems still till we get this solved. Yeah. Nice. So yeah, I mean, you guys are also working. Maybe I can just blend in a project that I just wanted to share. This is also a nice project that you worked on. Do you want to maybe share a little bit of a background to this? What your experience was? Let me just play it. Here we go.
Yeah, so we did this in was it summer 2021 or 2022? I can't remember, Matty. It's actually a bit ago now.
Doesn't say it on the file. So
22. I want to say 22.
22? Yeah, 22. Okay. Well, it basically came up as an opportunity to sort of try and do something that was a bit more experimental with Coach's sort of pillow bag. I know they've done an awful lot of sort of experimental campaign with regards to this bag, but they wanted to do something a bit more AR focused. Quite a quick turnaround. So we had to sort of work with something that was like easy to build out. And what we ended up doing was sort of an interactive window sort of display. So the sort of video that you see right now is almost like a stylized sort of render of it. So if you remove the blue background, if you can imagine that's sort of animated in sort of an actual window that you can point your camera at and then see through the phone's camera and interact with sort of the clouds and the coach bags. You could sort of switch between different colors, but it was a very primitive sort of design at the time, simply because of the limitations of the technology and time frame. So, you know, again, working with clients, a lot of this complicated stuff takes time. It's not necessarily easy to do quick turnarounds. So that's what it is, basically.
Yeah, but you know, that's
in its literal sense.
Well, that's such a good example of also choosing the right products to start with, because it's really good to take a approach where agile, you can build up on each other. You start with easy, low-hanging fruits, products that are easy to produce and to visualize, and then you just build it from there, right? You just take one step after the other. I'd also like to share this other video again, because maybe you can share a little background on that as well, because I love that you have also sustainability products in your you've been working on. It's not only the fashion industry you're focusing on, but also other ones. I just thought the story behind it was really nice. So sustainability is important to me as well. So go for it.
Yeah, this project presented a lot of issues along the journey to its kind of birth. We started, I think we started this in September, I want to say 22 as well.
Yeah, 22.
We basically got tasked with by a local college to basically come up with methods of showing kind of climate change, but hyper-localizing it for them. Because their issue was the fact that when looking online for kind of VR content, everything was kind of based either over in America or Africa, and kind of showing what climate change would look like over there. And they wanted to kind of bring it to the doorstep of the students. So this was we started this off as basically, right, we want to kind of show what the water level rise in this is Morecambe Bay, what this is going to look like over the next 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And basically we're tasked with this, and we had to then come up with a solution and a method of kind of showing that. So obviously we overcomplicated it, made it as the most complicated method possible to getting that kind of result, which was how do we LiDAR scan and photogrammetry scan the front of Morecambe and bring it into Unreal Engine. Annoyingly, we started it in September, which was the first issue, which meant we were working with a drone company to basically do large-scale photogrammetry scans of two spaces. So this is the base space, and then there was a local park as well.
So you basically had drones flying over the space and mapping out all the...
Each site was about 10,000 images, and it was kind of taken in kind of multiple kind of rotations. But that first issue was a major one because we were running out of clear skies to fly the drones, especially over the sea. But we got it, which was fine. The next issue we came across was then how do we work with large scale models in Unreal, because they hadn't launched their large scale model import feature yet. So we had to do.
No, they had. This was what that
it was just
they had, but it was so and this is like part of the topic. They had launched it and they denounced it, and as a lot of big tech companies go, look, we can do this now, and we were like, great, we'll try it, and then we tried it, and then there was so many issues with it, and that sort of. Well, no, they sort of just kept trying to update it, trickle it away, and there's not really a lot of documentation on it. So, it's a similar case with all technology in this space. Is that you've got big companies going, look, and they're trying to feed, they're feeding towards investors. They're going, we are, we're pioneering something. But the reality is, just the software and the actual hardware is not in parity with each other. It's not actually there yet. So we did, as Matty's saying, we did have so many issues with that. Just that little bit of that process, and I think that added months to the actual process, didn't it, Matty?
Yeah. But we got it in, which is
we got it in. Yeah, we did. We did manage it.
And then the next problem we found was we decided to both work with both water simulation and tree simulation. So
I can tell you
again, similar story.
Firstly, we couldn't work with both the tree sim and water sim, and we also had to do 360 render, which we had to work with 3 different plugins. Those 3 different plugins didn't want to talk to each other, so one did one thing, one did another thing, and we had to try and basically spoke to all 3 of those developers and negotiated a methodology of actually rendering that out.
So this goes back to the pipeline, having your tech pipeline in place and understanding how things work together, if they work together. And maybe just to break it down for everyone listening. This is a great example. Like we had first the Coachella handbag, which was an easy product in the beginning. You can visualize it really quickly. And this here is like the non plus ultra example to go in the other direction. Water simulation and tree simulation are really challenging. The Unreal Engine is a gaming environment that Matty just mentioned. It's basically a software where you can create gameplays and worlds, and it has a super high fidelity. So it's a very nice technology or tool to check out. And if you go into water simulations, we're talking about particle simulations. If you're at that point level, where you have every little molecule, every water molecule has like a certain weight, it has a density, it has behavior and physical traits basically to it. And every little molecule gets simulated in this environment. And that's why this is such a heavy file to actually generate. So water simulations, for example. Just to
make it heavier as well. The tree simulation had to be a storm.
Okay, so
everything had to be in sync. Yeah. So the weather had to influence the trees, and then that then had to sort of have influence over the water. You know, just to clarify, we are not the people doing the water particle simulator. We're not building that. We were applying that. But it proves the sort of the nature of where things are going in order to achieve this sort of fidelity and get that wow. You have to have people that are able to go and build a water particle simulation for then, us guys to go and implement it. Again, still the thing with the trees were a recent sort of release. And again, they were sort of presented as being super easy and really flexible to put in, and they weren't. So, we've had to learn lessons there, of sort of maybe not trusting certain developers, for the first 6 months of when they released it, saying that it's amazing, but you live and you learn. We've followed off the back of this. We have actually bounced into another sort of climate focused project, which is carbon visualization. So that's with the same college, and it's almost like a not necessarily sequel, but almost like a part of the series. And for that one, we've sort of avoided water, but instead we've gone for sort of microparticle simulation. So we're visualizing the idea of the invisible carbon in the air, but down sort of a minuscule degree, and then blowing it up so that you can sort of see how carbon flows through environments. So that's the second one that we've done. Again, we just love challenging ourselves with Unreal Engine.
Yeah, and it's such a fun tool. You just get this
final issue with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having issues. Yeah, I mean, I remember also having issues with Unreal when I first imported fashion outfits. I think the textures on the outside, the UV maps for everyone out there. It's basically like unfolding a how do you say, cube into a flat piece. Basically, it's bringing in that outside visual of your model that was not working properly, so we had to remap all those details and everything. But that's part of it. It's just like you said, we're at the starting point. We're all building together, the tech companies, the brands, the creators out there, and having communities to exchange learnings, or platforms like this to exchange your learnings, is really important part of it, which we definitely need to keep up for sure. But I just want to say what I love about your project, and why I also brought it up, is that I feel like sometimes, climate change is a big political topic anyway, but it's a topic that's so far in the future that people have a hard time really, really grasping what it means, what effects it will have on us in 20, 30, 40 years from now. And you guys really added really great value to visualize this, to really show people what this means when the sea level rises, because it's a whole different story seeing it visually than just trying to imagine it as a normal human being. So cheers to you guys. That was a really nice project. I'm glad I could share that as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
So maybe to round up our conversation, I'd love to also hear from you guys how you stay up to date with all the tech developments, because like you said, it's a little bit like a moving target. Every technology is evolving, everything's moving. Every week we have new input. What are your best takeaways or things that you do that helps you stay up to date?
I guess we cover it as a team. I usually go LinkedIn, Instagram. James is always on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or X, whatever you want to go for.
Or X. And then it is just literally we're on it every single day. We're hunting for new trends, new tech, new reports, just to kind of read through, add the data in, and just try and keep on top of everything.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned also conferences when we had our previous conversation as well. Being up to date with conferences and connecting with the people there as well. I know it's a topic I keep bringing up, but it's just such an essential part of it, right?
Yeah. So I think we talked about sort of the principle of like looking at the big techs sort of conferences. So obviously in the case of Apple, but also sort of the more niche ones, which is like NVIDIA, AMD. So the people who are the companies, I should say, that are powering the back end of all this, because ultimately it's in their interest to try and show software of how it plays with all this stuff. So they often do some more advanced things that aren't necessarily going to be available for the next few years. I'd say bouncing off sort of where we get things from, it is also the case of you've got to find people that you actually enjoy how they actually give you, information. I could go and give you XYZ person on Twitter, but the way that they write content and everything else might not necessarily relate. I can definitely say that there's a guy called Robert Scoble who released a book with somebody called Irina Cronin. The book is called The Immersive Metaverse Playbook for Business Leaders. It is like a 300-page document that they put together that goes through sort of the history of it. By the history of it, I mean sort of documenting this history of computers, why it has reached this point now, how it's always been coming to this point now, and sort of going into detail as to how different industries will react, how different people will react, audiences, all that sort of stuff. But it gives quite a nice sort of balanced sort of look at everything. So I definitely say check that out. Those two are good to follow.
That's cool. Really good. Maybe we can post it afterwards underneath the session for anyone who's interested. We can find the links there. That's a really good sharing point. Nice. So to wrap things up, maybe the last question would be what you guys are really looking forward to in your space specifically. Is there anything on the forefront that you guys are excited about, technology coming up? Would love to hear a little bit about that as well.
I'd say for us, we got a delay on it. Cool. We're obviously we're Apple fans. I guess you could go as far as say we're Apple fanboys. Not necessarily sort of like love the corporate, the corporation, all that sort of stuff. But I think, as designers, we appreciate their sort of aesthetic and vibe. We've understood for a long time that, Apple, when they do it, they'll do it really cool. Vision Pro is very exciting. That's on the cusp of being released. I think our hope was, I'm going to get to this. Our hope is that, it's going to sort of drive, new consumers to go, this is interesting, this. It's got that sexy, sleek, cool look. But it's not going to come out with its faults. Again, topic at hand, mastering expectations. Apple said that is not going to be a complete, 10 out of 10. If you look online at anybody, a lot of the people are going, looks really cool, had a massive emotional response to it, but my head kind of hurt after 15 minutes. And it's simply a case of that it's just too heavy for people's heads. And that's because of, the choice of material and things like that. But it really proves that, Apple's trying to get to that. We can do it the best. But in doing it the best, they've had to compromise. And one of those compromises is how comfortable it is. And there really is, the majority of people's audiences, companies' audiences, etc., are not going to just settle with sticking a big thing on their head that's uncomfortable after 15 minutes. It really has to be something that is, sharp, simple, really easy to use. And the reality is we're not there yet, even though people might be looking at this Apple headset and be like, maybe we are there now. Maybe this is the beginning.
That was the big change, right? It changed the thoughts, like the strategies. I heard people's heads rattling when that came out. But it's like you said, the device needs to have like the least barrier of entries or to ensure really nice usability and user experience. And every headset, every device you have to put on is just going to be another step that people will not do if they're not like in a room and having someone put it on their head. That's why I'm such a strong believer that the augmented reality is going to be the direction to go, because we need a device that everyone uses, that everyone's comfortable with, that that supports all the technology, that has all the base support system infrastructure in place. It's the phone, probably. At the end of the day, I think the phone's going to be the portal that we're going to be using, which is the most easy way to do, because everyone has a phone with them all the time in this case. That's why I was already far away from headsets for a while, and I was curious about the Apple Pro when it came out, but I'm opting for augmented reality for sure.
Read the news again. It looks really cool, and it has to exist in order to, have developers work on it and produce things for it. But I don't think it's going to be the big. The wave hasn't arrived yet, basically. The sweeping one, anyway. So, anyway, come on, Matty. Let's see your thoughts.
Oh yeah. From my side of things, I've been exploring a recent topic which has been coming up, which was around multimodal AIs. So looking at kind of multi-input channels to single output or multiple outputs. So whether that's photo, video, and text prompts all kind of leading into an output. It's one of the trends that is kind of coming up at the moment, and it's like taking what we know of AI and enhancing it.
Integrating AI. For example, like we just talked before, the InSurf that was, I think 6 days ago or something, I saw a post that Google worked together with ETH Zurich and developed technology where you can have a nerf space, so a virtual space, and you can text prompt, write in a little description and say, in this space I want to have a coffee table with some croissants on it, and it will just make it appear. And then you have these, it basically works over bounding box from what I read. It defines the space, and then it generates a 3D virtual model. You can walk around, you can see that table with croissants. So is that something you guys can also see yourselves using going forward and including in your workflows, like those AI visualizations?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything you don't need those drones, right, to fly over. It might really speed up processes and help people, take influence on the space and have more creativity as well, right?
Definitely. Just for, again, that issue that we kind of raised was just smaller data sets. Smaller data sets means easier rendering times, means easier processing, means easier access. So I think nerfs are going to come in big. Yeah,
for sure. Super nice. So I see we're already we got to a really good time. We're by shortly after 40 minutes. I mentioned that during the last session that I'm trying to keep the sweet spot in 40 minutes because that's, I think, what everyone feels good with, at least from the analysis that I saw. I just want to give you guys a huge thank you for joining. So maybe, do you want to share still how people can get in contact with you guys if they want to have any questions afterwards, or if there's anything on their minds that they still want to connect with?
Yeah, I think our LinkedIn's are probably the best ones. Our website's so out of date that we can't keep up with it anymore. So that's one of our New Year's resolutions this year, is to get that all updated. But yeah, definitely just LinkedIn or email, which is I'm Matty at cyro.uk and James is James at cyro.uk.
Really simple, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining and for breaking down this AR, VR world to everyone. XR, you can add on to it as you go. I think this is a really, really important session to get people grounded on technology and what's happening, and also maybe spur some ideas in which direction they want to go. So thank you so much for joining. It was really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right. And to everyone out there, we'll see you guys on the next session then. All right.